Hi, welcome to our channel True Up. As we all know, during the summit that took place on May 12th and 13th, US President Joe Biden met with the leaders of the ASEAN countries at the White House. This was widely regarded as an effort by the world's only superpower to enlist the bloc's members in its fight against a growing China. However, in my opinion, it won't sway the regional nations in favor of the United States, and the US attempt to win over ASEAN for its geopolitical objectives is unlikely to succeed. How come? What is the attitude of ASEAN nations toward the United States given its clear goal, in addition? Does this have an impact on their partnership with China? Okay, let's keep discussing about this subject. The US-initiated summit was widely seen as a signal to emphasize the significance of what America calls the Indo-Pacific region out of strategic concerns and to counter the growing influence of China in the region, especially in light of the escalating tensions between Russia and Ukraine. Although the conference took place in the midst of the more contentious Russia-Ukraine conflict, the Biden administration is more concerned about guaranteeing a so-called free and open Indo-Pacific. Instead, American President Joe Biden wants to strengthen his nation's position in the broader geopolitical conflict with China. The ASEAN nations must support the United States in order for the Biden administration to achieve this goal, and it is possible that the United States may participate in the resolution of South China Sea conflicts. Such actions may be seen as undermining China's authority in the area and impeding the peaceful development of relations between China and the ASEAN nations. What are the ASEAN nations' opinions regarding this, given that the United States has such a clear goal? However, given that ASEAN nations have already become aware of Washington's customary hegemony, duplicity, and egotism, its hope to win over ASEAN members would shrivel. Initially, the summit's planning has exposed Washington's duplicitous nature. Due to a wave of protests from ASEAN countries, the summit was moved from late March to May as a result of its disregard for ASEAN members about scheduling concerns despite its claim of enduring commitment. Before the conference, a Cambodian minister affiliated to Prime Minister Kao Kim Horn argued that Washington should have organized bilateral discussions between the US and ASEAN nations if it were serious about enhancing relations with the organization. According to him, ASEAN leaders should be treated with respect and equality. The American government has a long history of sponsoring harmful gatherings under the pretext of productive discussions. For instance, the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy being promoted at this summit makes claims about upholding regional freedom and openness and respecting ASEAN's central role in regional affairs, but in practice it encourages conflict, weakens unity, and endangers regional cooperation and growth through exclusive geopolitical blocs like AUKUS and Quad. This deceit and bullying have been exposed by several ASEAN members with clear heads. Indonesia and Malaysia issued a warning that AUKUS might trigger a significant arms race in the area. Many ASEAN members have expressed concern that the so-called Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is primarily a political endeavor meant to counter China, rather than a sincere and thoughtful economic policy integration initiative, according to a recent report by the U.S. Center for Strategic and International Studies. During this conference, the White House will make fruitless attempts to get ASEAN to impose sanctions against Russia. Washington has been attempting to get ASEAN to take sides in the present Ukraine issue ever since it started to escalate, but the majority of ASEAN countries have resisted the pressure. On April 7, 2 of the group's 10 members voted against and 6 of them chose to abstain from supporting a motion that would have expelled Russia from the UNHRC. Members of ASEAN, who have historically maintained a separate foreign policy, have pushed for diplomacy and dialogue as a means of resolving the situation. Additionally, several ASEAN members are well aware of Washington's covert plans to use the brutal suffering of others in the Russia-Ukraine conflict in order to profit. For instance, Don Pramudwinai, the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Thailand, expressed his appreciation for China's objective and fair stance on the Ukraine issue during his visit there in the first week of April, saying that Asian countries should maintain peace and stability in the region, jointly resist unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdiction that have no basis in international law, and prevent attempts to create tensions and replicate crises in the region. Washington's tried-and-true methods for securing its geopolitical goals, such as playing small clique politics and pressuring others to pick sides, go against ASEAN's desire to maintain regional peace and stability and achieve sustainable economic development. Launching trade conflicts and shattering agreements, classic unilateral measures by Washington, significantly disrupt regular economic exchanges and supply lines in the area and severely harm ASEAN's economy. All of those transgressions have damaged Washington's reputation as the only superpower in the world, diminished its influence, and increased its distance from ASEAN members. The United States is fearful of losing its dominance in Southeast Asia as a result of China's sharply out of expectation rise, therefore they felt it necessary to tighten their grip on hegemonic power. In order to limit China, the United States has been working with its allies and regional nations through initiatives like the Pivot to Asia and the Indo-Pacific strategy. Washington never stops exaggerating the Indo-Pacific concept in order to promote the targeted military, political, and economic strategy. According to a recent report by the United States Center for Strategic and International Studies, many ASEAN members are concerned that the so-called Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is primarily a political endeavor meant to counter China, rather than a sincere and thoughtful economic policy integration initiative. Veronica Sarasvati, a researcher at Indonesia's Center for Strategic and International Studies, agreed. It is clear that, while the U.S. wishes to increase its influence in ASEAN, it has not created actual collaboration with ASEAN nations, only symbolic cooperation. Many feel that ASEAN members, with their major focus now on post-pandemic economic recovery, will retain neutrality and ignore attempts to push them into a U.S. sphere of influence. The Indonesian scholar emphasized that Southeast Asian countries, including Indonesia, do not want to be drawn into a power struggle. Powerful countries should never employ coercive measures to coerce other countries to take their side, she said. For a long time, the United States and its allies' exercise of hegemonic power has had a significant influence on the survival and development of numerous countries. The U.S. may soon find itself unable to make inroads among ASEAN countries, especially after Malaysia and Indonesia expressed reservations about the AUKUS trilateral security relationship comprising Australia and Britain. For example, the U.S. has been unable to impose pressure on ASEAN over the Russia-Ukraine crisis, with the majority of the 10-member group voting against a proposal last month to suspend Russia from the United Nations Human Rights Council. Overall, history teaches every country that acting without scruples nearly usually results in the opposite of what one wishes. It is past time for Washington to grasp this lesson, reject its Cold War-era ambition of hegemony, retain an open and inclusive mentality, and play its proper role in ensuring regional and global peace, stability, and growth. Thanks for watching our video. We would appreciate it if you subscribed our channel and gave us a thumb. See you.